Mom, I just one more thing from the store, please. Mom, can we think about tomorrow, please? Mom, just please, just Mom, Mommy. Mom, 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 Mommy. Mom, I'm not that hungry today. Mom,
Hello?
I don't really want to go.
Hello, comadre.
Hey, comadre.
Do you have a minute for comadre time? Hola, comadres. Welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host, Marcy, and today we have a phenomenal guest. Her name's Lissette, and I will let her introduce herself. Who are you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lissette Norman. I am the author of the children's books, Plátanos Go With Everything. I have other books. I don't know if you want me to get into all of that, but I have, I was the co-editor with Estela Juarez on Until Someone Listens. Recently, a book On the Line, my story of becoming the first African-American Rockette with Jennifer Jones came out. That was a collaboration that we did. And My Feet Are Laughing was my very first book. And I think I got everything. I think I got all the books. So,
Awesome.
And I'm also a children's book, picture book editor.
Awesome. So, you are a writer. I have a question. What is your profession? But do you do anything else besides editing and writing?
No, I don't. But for many years, I worked for early intervention with babies who were developmentally disabled or had delays with the little ones, birth to 3 years old. And I did that for many years, for actually almost like over 2 decades.
Wow.
Before, and then I left that to become a full-time writer.
That's
and
amazing.
editor.
So we're well versed on the show about early intervention because, as you know, we cater to families of Black and Brown children that have children with special needs. So, I feel like that makes sense to me. The way that you write and the way that you tell the story is very visual to me. Like if I didn't have the illustrations in the book, I would still be able to visualize your story, which is so important for our children, especially our children on the spectrum. So,
right.
Before we get into the writing process and like about the books themselves, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood? Like, where did you grow up? And did that influence your writing?
Absolutely. Well, I was born in the Bronx, but I was raised in Manhattan, in the Heights for half of my childhood, and then the other half was in Harlem. So that all of that informed my writing. I take all of that experience into my writing. If you read my books, you could see, especially that Plátanos Go With Everything. It was all personal experience, family gatherings, and of course where I grew up.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me, I was teaching in Washington Heights before, specifically close to the area where the book takes place. So the neighborhood where the book takes place is like, I want to say like Lower Washington Heights, around like 160 something street, correct? So a lot of the students that when I read the book, they were like, "Oh my God, I know that place," which was so cool because like as a New Yorker, I feel like when our hometown is represented, it's very much like downtown or areas where we don't actually live, I mean, other people live there, but like not the Dominican population or the Black and Brown communities. So it was really nice to see like our neighborhood, quote unquote, represented in the book. So I want to talk a little bit about writing. You have such a long career in early intervention, 20 years, all right, like plus, I'm sure. Like what was it that happened that that flipped that switch in you that you decided to pursue writing full time? Because I'm sure you were already a writer. That was something that you enjoyed. So what made you decide like that's it? Like I'm gonna do this full time and like really invest myself in that way.
Yeah, and I have to say, like when I worked for early intervention, it was incredibly rewarding, especially to see, how the kids progress. Because sometimes I would have one child, and then if the parent had another child and that child had delays, so I kept in touch. Like they became my friends. A lot of the parents, I covered a lot of the Latino communities because families that did not speak English. So, they gave most of those cases. I mean, there were two of us who handled all of the bilingual cases, and so we would see the progress. And then because I kind of stayed in their lives and the parents' lives, I would know what was happening with the older children that were no longer, because it was birth to 3 years old that our clients and our cases. And so that we had, we could keep in touch. And so, I don't know, that was very dear to me. It was rewarding. And, I really tried to, because I felt that especially families, the parents that did not speak English, they didn't get, I think, the care that I thought they should. So I went out of my way to, to give them everything and inform them about services that they hadn't even thought about. And then, of course, if they had any other children who would have delays, some delays were resolved by the time they got to kindergarten, others didn't. And, but I was just trying to, it was really rewarding in that way, that I could help them in a way that I knew that they were not getting services that other people who spoke English were, I saw the difference, so I try to make sure I went out of my way. So anyway, so that was very rewarding. But my writing was my passion. I was writing the whole time that I was doing that. I was writing. And I started writing poetry for adults. And then I got into children's book writing and all of that. One, I'm a child at heart. So that played a big part. But always working with children. I was always working with them. So I transitioned and then I left full time because, like I said, I wanted to, that was my passion. But I sometimes I miss it. I don't miss all the other, the bureaucracy behind it. But I do miss working with the parents. Some of them, they became like friends in outside of work. So it was really cool.
Yeah. I feel like that's like one of the most rewarding parts as a special education teacher. And also like creating this community that I've created around the show is being able to keep in contact with parents and help them in that way. Because I feel like you said, like in Black and Brown communities, especially bilingual communities, like even more in bilingual families, like they don't get the services that they deserve because they don't know. And if I can be a bridge or inform them, that makes me even more happy because I feel that it was hard for me, and I'm not monolingual. I am bilingual, but I have more time in this country, and I do speak English. So I feel like it was hard for me as an English speaker. I can only imagine how much harder it is for those parents that don't really understand the system, that don't speak the language. And also, that there are microaggressions that happen all the time, especially when the providers are not people of color, And
Right.
I've seen it time and time again. And even in the school system itself, when it's not people of color that are teaching your children, a lot of the time there's microaggressions that happen to parents without us even really knowing, or the parents don't know really what the consequences of those actions are. Because they don't provide the same opportunities for children that do speak English because they feel like the parent won't understand or they don't know how to communicate appropriately with the parent.
Right. And what a lot of people don't know is that early intervention specifically, they don't just help the children, they help the whole family. So sometimes I was going to shelters, I was going to, families that were living in really horrible conditions. And I mean, I had to, I helped them with, like I said, it's hard to help a child when they don't have a home. So part of my job, which the parents didn't know this, a lot of the Latino families didn't know this, but I helped them get an apartment, help them get health insurance, And if they needed any kind of public assistance, food stamps, WIC, whatever, I did that too. Like I was like right there sitting with them in the when they were applying and translating and making sure that they secured all these services.
Wow.
And so, but they don't know that a lot of them. I mean, I went into a home one time, not to get too deep into this, but this is how, you know, how dire and how serious things were for certain families, or how bad and dangerous. I went into a home and they had the water like up to their ankles and they just would walk through. Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, how are you living? But because they were undocumented. And so they didn't dare complain. And I was like, oh no, this cannot be. We got to get you out of here. And I talked to a landlord. I convinced him, you know, because it was a couple of families that were sharing this apartment. And so I worked it out where they were able to combine the money that they received to get an apartment and got them out of there. I was like, you cannot be here. This is not even healthy. So yeah, so it was, you see a lot of stuff, and landlords, you know, who take advantage of situations like this, and they weren't even paying like a little bit of rent. They was expensive. And I was like, how are you living here? You know, anyway, so it was a lot of that. And I was just, you know, I was happy that I was able to be there, you know, to change certain situations like that, you know, and they would thrive and they would, you know, like I would see them, like we'd go to the supermarket and bump into them. And it was like we were friends, you know, but it was just, I was like, somebody got to take care of them because, you know, no one's telling them this information. So anybody who's, you know, a little plug for early intervention, you know, there are more, you know, there are a lot of services, and you should ask whoever your coordinator is to, you know, like about everything, like let them know your whole situation and ask them, how can you help me? Because, you know, they're available to do that, you know, and a lot of parents were surprised when I was like, I can help you change this. You don't have to live like this. So, and they were grateful for it. So anyway, so that was my time. And all of that, like I said, was very rewarding to me, you know.
So I want to know, what was your first, what are your earliest memories of writing? Like what? I know when I was a kid, there was this one book that I read that inspired me to write. And it was like Emily's Notebook, something like that. It was kind of like journalistic style, and that got me into writing. So I started picking up composition notebooks and just like journaling all of the time because of that book. So what was the earliest memory of you writing, and what was it that, do you know, like what was it that inspired you to pick up a pen?
Oh, writing. Well, I was always journaling. You know, I was a quieter kid. So I was more like expressing my feelings in journals. And a really funny story too, when I was in high school, I took a class. I don't know if you've heard of stenography.
Yes.
It's like so for whoever doesn't know, it's what they used to use in courtrooms to write quickly. Like what was happening, you can write. And they're like symbols. So they're not actual letters and words. They're just symbols.
Yeah.
And I was always so afraid of my mother or my brothers, especially one of my annoying older brothers, finding my journal. So I wrote a whole journal in stenography. And then I could leave it around because I knew no one can read it.
Do they don't they call that shorthand too? Like when you write like that, isn't that called shorthand? Because it's like symbols.
What they call it now, I couldn't even read the journal now if I tried. But yeah, but I was always journaling. And I always I wasn't very vocal about my feelings. So I used to journal a lot and express myself that way. So I was writing from a young age.
Amazing.
Or journaling.
Did you save all the journals, or did you get rid of them eventually?
No, I don't know whatever happened to some. My mother kept some of my writing though, which helped me with my very first book. My Feet Are Laughing was my very first children's book, and I took a lot of that, you know, some of that information to write that book.
I love that. So, do you remember, like, okay, so you were a huge writer. Were you also like an avid reader as well of books?
I was not an early reader. I just, and a lot of that, you know, and I said this before, a lot of it had to do with, you know, I didn't really see a reflection of me in books when I was a kid. And so I didn't think that we were important enough to be in books.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never had that connection with books. I was definitely the school back in the day where, kids were all playing in the street games. Yeah. And, I was more active in that way. I had 3 older brothers. So I was very active in that way. So, but I wish that I would have, because I was a quiet kid, I think I would have really benefited from reading books. Mm-hmm. Having, somewhere else to go. I love adventure and things like that. And I would have really benefited. So I missed out. And it wasn't until I was in my early teens that I found my older brother was reading, which was quite raw books for my age, but Down These Mean Streets by Perry Thomas. Mm-hmm. He left it on the table one day, and I found it, and I just started. I was curious about it. I saw, and I started reading it, and I was really blown away. I was like, wow, they put stories about people that look like me in books. I was just it was a really and I just couldn't put it down. I just kept reading it, and I think that for me that was very transformational. When you see yourself in a book, people like in your neighborhood, people that look like you, using the language, the Spanglish and all of that. I was like, wow, and I was drawn to books, and I could just imagine if that would have happened to me when I was younger, what that would have done for me, Yeah. So, but yeah, that was the book that did it. And I was like, wow. Again, it was, a lot of, I don't know if you know the story, but if it was a kind of raw book, but it worked. It did what it was supposed to do. And it found me at the time it was supposed to find me. So,
yeah. So I've always been a reader, like an early reader, because my mom, we grew up in the Heights also. And mommy no me dejaba salir. Mommy wouldn't let me out of the house. Like my brother could play outside, but I wasn't allowed to go outside, not even with my brother. So the way I escaped was through books. So I remember picking up a lot of books. My dad was a reader. He loved reading, and he would take us to the library to take books out. At first, it was like a lot of Cinderella and all these folk tales and things like that. And I feel like you, I didn't see myself in these books. Like I saw so many other cultures reflected, not even that many cultures, like really like American culture. American culture reflected, even in the book of the journal book. The little girl was from the suburbs, from the country, rural area. It had nothing to do with like my reality that I was living at the time. And I feel that I didn't really see myself reflected in a book until I picked up The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde.
Oh yeah.
By Junot Diaz. I felt like that was transformational at the time. I did read Julia Alvarez, but even then it was kind of like relating to stuff that happened in Dominican Republic and yes, she came to the United States, but like I feel like her experience, or the Garcia's girls' experience in the book. And I also read how the Garcia girls lost their accents, but I feel like their experience didn't really reflect who I was. So I feel like your books do that so well, and they paint such a beautiful picture of what it means to be Dominican and what it means to be from the Heights and what it means to live in an urban area and still like valuing that experience. Because Elizabeth Acevedo, actually, I went to one of her chats about her books, and she said like one of her first poems was like "Ode to a Rat." And she was like in this amazing like writing course, right, with this professor that everybody's writing like about butterflies and birds and like all this other stuff. And she made an ode to a rat because it was like summer of, I don't remember what year, but Uptown was like infested by rats, especially the area where she grew up in, which was like Upper Harlem, like on the west side. And she made the ode to the rat, and her professor was like, this is not good enough to be published, However, look at where Elizabeth Acevedo is right now. But I feel like you, Elizabeth, you guys have been so just, your books have contributed so much to the culture. And it has been really, really life-changing to have you guys be part of this beautiful, I guess like renaissance of literature for Latinos. Because it's not just, Latin American stories, but also like urban Dominican stories that are important to be reflected, and shown to children.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things, and for lumping me in with Elizabeth Acevedo, that's an honor. I mean, she's an amazing writer. I love her work. I'm currently actually reading Family Lore, and enjoying it. But yeah, I wanted. It was so important to me to contribute to, because there's a huge absence of, Latinx representation in children's literature, and I didn't want children to go through what I went through. So I was like, I want to just write as many books as possible. Yes, I'm going to keep writing about us. I'm not writing about, because sometimes they'll ask writers if they'll write about other things. I'm going to keep writing about us because we need it. We want to get as many books, out there as possible. So I wanted to contribute to that absence of, Latin literature, specifically Dominican, even more specific, Afro-Dominican, characters and families. So that was so important to me. It is still important to me to do that.
I feel like, so you wrote My Feet Are Laughing, and you've written a couple of other things. So out of all those books that you've written so far, which has been your favorite? Was it Plátanos Go With Everything or another one?
You know how how parents say they don't like to talk about their favorite kids? Because my books are like my children, right? but I put my whole heart into Plátanos Go With Everything. My Feet Are Laughing is special because it was my firstborn. But Plátanos Go With Everything was, all heart, all family. It was written in a time when I was really missing my family because, I don't know, as you know, or you may have heard, I wrote it at the start of the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And I was really missing my family and coming to the realization that I wasn't going to see them. We had actually planned activities to see each other, and we were like having to cancel things. And one of them was I was on the planning committee for my family reunion. And we were all proud because we got everything done early. We were all set. And then, realizing like, oh, wow, we won't be able to see each other. So we had to do a lot of stuff by Zoom. And it was just because we couldn't do the family reunion. Whenever we did a Zoom, we would talk about the reunion and funny things that happened and passed. It was going to actually be, I think it was going to be like our 19th anniversary, our 19th annual reunion. Or 20th, mentira, 20. I think it was going to be the 20th one. And so we would just bring up all these stories about, when we get together, my family there is jokes and jokes and jokes that like, we're a fun bunch. And so all of that energy was behind the writing of the Plátano book. So, just family gatherings, and my household was a place where everyone gathered for parties. And again, it wasn't like a planned party. It just things that it happened, because there was already the food, there was already the music, we clear the table and everybody dances. And that's just how it always is. When we get together, it turns into a party. And that was like that every weekend. So, all of that energy and all that spirit was behind the Plátanos book. So that one it's special in that way, and it was, just remembering my mother with the cooking. And, even though I wasn't an early reader, she told a lot of stories. So she was she was a really amazing, wonderful storyteller. I don't know if there was like a variety show in Dominican Republic. It was kind of like In Living Color. I can never remember the name of that show, but there was like a show in Dominican Republic.
Who is it? With Puking y Boruga?
It was a variety show, right? So it was like they would do different skits and then they would have music.
Oh, okay. Sábado de Corporán.
Maybe that's the name. I don't know.
So it's either Extremo Extremo or Sábado de Corporán. And there was also a funny one, like with Boca de Piano es un show, which is, I feel like that's more recent though. But I feel like for our time,
back in the day.
For our time, definitely, it must have been like Sábado de Corporán, which had like a bunch of skits, and then they had the Little Women dancing, like for like the musical guests, right? But then they had a lot of like funny little like short stories in the skit.
Yeah, and I bring that up because I would try to convince my mother to go on to like audition because she was that funny. It's very comical, very and I've said it, she's very animated.
Yeah.
And like you can tell the story and she can tell the story and her version was funny. So anyway, so I love to listen to her tell stories. So that's how I fell in love with storytelling. That was my introduction, you know, especially when her and all the vecinas got together.
Oh my
you
God.
know, in my first book, My Feet Are Laughing, I have a piece where the little girl wishes to enter the kitchen where they all got together because, you know, kids couldn't be a part of that conversation. They had to go. Yes. But I wanted to be to the point that I would be like, Mommy, you want me to wash the dishes? You know, like I never wanted to wash the dishes, right? But that was my way of trying to be in there just to listen to them and, you know, be in that oral society of just, and they were talking, you know, husbands and politics and, you know, whatever current event and whatever the gossip, like it was just really fun. So I loved all of that stories. So that was my introduction to storytelling.
That's awesome. Yeah, I actually have a tia like similar to your mom, Edita. Shout out to tia Edita. She was like the funny one. Like my mom was like always like growing up. I feel like she's more fun now. I've made her more fun. But growing up, tia Edita was like the storyteller. So when she would tell stories, everybody would just stop what they're doing and just listen. But she always had like some kind of weird joke. Her and her brother were like, I don't even know, like, I guess Abbott and Costello in American culture, but like, they were just funny together, so funny. And they would like feed off of each other and go off. But yeah, I relate to that whole, the whole like participating in that kind of culture and just enjoying each other's company and being like the older kid, like trying to like listen to like what the señoras were talking about at the time, especially my mom and her comadre. I would always get in trouble, but like I would be like listening in to see what they were sharing about, and I feel like that's something from our culture that I don't know, like I wish that it wouldn't go away. You know, I want to keep that alive, and I feel that you know, by storytelling the way that you do, it really just continues that oral ¿cómo te digo? That oral tradition of telling stories in like a very una manera bien viva. How do you say it in English? Like a very vivacious way that is not just like telling the facts, but you're embellishing a little bit as well.
Right. I mean, I think it's important. At least I take slices of life. You know, like one of the things that I touch on in My Feet Are Laughing, which whenever I did readings in schools, the kids always wanted to talk about the parents in My Feet Are Laughing. They're divorced, but there's a piece in there, but they're good friends. And the father would come around, and the mother, you know, she would, when he came to visit and pick up the kids, you know, the main character, her sister, you know, she would have like his favorite dessert, you know, like, because they were just really good friends. And that was so important, you know, when you're co-parenting, but you're not together, you know, it's important to show that. And it was a compliment that when they reviewed the book, they were saying that particular part of the book defies the stereotype of the broken home, you know, and that's how it was in my real life. You know, my father and my mother, they divorced. My father came over for dinner. When he remarried his wife, and they both came over for dinner with my mother and her husband. And I think it was just so important because one of the things that kids feel when their parents get divorced is like, you know, they're going to lose a parent, whoever's going to be leaving the home.
Yeah.
So it's very important to them. So I would do readings, and the kids will, you know, they would be like, my parents are divorced too. And they're friends. And, you know, like they wanted to talk about this. And I think one of the things that we do as adults sometimes is that we forget that children are sharp. We underestimate them. And a lot of times they feel what they feel. It's not like they don't know what's going on. Because when my parents got divorced, it's not like I didn't know. We know exactly what's going on, but we may not have the language for it. And so I felt that with my books, with my writing, like I wanted to give them the language to express that same feeling. And it also encourages dialogue between the parent and the child, like that may be going through that or getting ready to go, that this is maybe a good way to kind of break it down to them, to see like, yeah, we're getting divorced, but you're not going to lose your father or your mother or however it works out. They'll still come around. So all of that is really important to do. And I consider all of that in my writing.
I love that it's breaking stereotypes too, because like it's very much, people like to play into these stereotypes because that's like what people are used to. People are used to there being a divorce, and then there's a bitter parent that is like hell-bent on making the other person's life impossible. And I feel that through writing and through showcasing these kind of stories in different ways, that we can start breaking that stereotype. We don't have to ascribe to everything that has happened before, or like that really, really bad story. Like it doesn't have to be like your parents are getting divorced. Oh my God, this is going to happen to you because we saw that this happened. And no, I love that you're highlighting like positive stories as well, because I feel like that is just as important as like obviously showcasing our stories, but also breaking away from stigmas and generalizations and stereotypes that we have in our society.
Because they happen, so we have to address them. And again, I think children they like me. I was very quiet in that way because things were happening, but I didn't know how to express it. And I turned to my journal, which thank God it was an outlet for me. But if you can create a situation where you can encourage dialogue between a parent and a child, like, because things happen and it wasn't like, let me sit my kids down. My parents didn't do that. Let's sit them down and let's explain. We were just moving. Life was just changing. Suddenly, I'm living in the Dominican Republic now, because I lived in Dominican Republic as a kid. And
wait, so you guys went back?
My brother and I, my mother, we went to live there. My mother was here. Long story, but I won't get into. But my brother and I suddenly would find, we were living. I was 5, living in Dominican Republic, or around 5 years old. He's a year older than me, and my brother went to live. It was just, my point is, I won't get into all of the reasons why, but but I'm living in Dominican Republic, and I'm going to school there now. And I had already started. I believe I had already started kindergarten. My father spoke English fluently. My mother did not. She spoke very little. So I was already at that age where I was starting to get exposed to a lot of English. So now I'm in an all Spanish school in DR. So it was a trip. So my point is that when you don't have someone explain it to you and get you to understand it, it could be very confusing. It was a very unsteady time for me. And my brother. And thank God I had him, because I felt like, I got that sense of security with him being there.
Yeah.
But, we underestimate children. And my point is that sometimes we don't always explain things to children. And I don't think it's done on purpose. I think, things are just happening and parents have to take action.
Yeah.
And they just do what they do. So I wanted to, I was mindful of that when I was when I write my books.
I love that. So, as part of like promoting the book, I know you've done a bunch of speaking and great engagements. You've been at public schools doing read alouds and all of that, and thanks for publicity as well. So far, what has been your favorite moment in that, I guess, publicity circle or the round of promoting the book?
Well, I think I love work, kind of reading directly and meeting the children. You know what I mean? That to me, that's the most important thing. Like, I've done events where it's mostly adults, And that's all cool. I love that. I can, I have to kind of, when things like that happen, I have to just change up how I'm going to address the audience.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite is doing school visits, in any situation or programs for children. So I mean, there isn't one particular one, but oh, you know what? Let me just say, I recently, or this summer, I did a reading at my elementary school.
Oh,
So that was really special. Yeah, I went back to my elementary school, and that was a really special one. So I actually have to say that that's my favorite because I had not been back in the school since I graduated.
oh my goodness.
So going back, it was a trip, like walking through the halls. It was very surreal. It was just a really beautiful moment. And they showed me so much love. They made like a really big deal of it. They got like I got the local councilman to even come. I mean, it was really, really beautiful. Beautiful
That's
experience.
awesome.
So
I love that.
yeah. Yeah.
So, Lisa, when you were done with the book, I know, did you? Oh, okay. This is the question I had. Did you work with Dominican writers to help, get the book off the ground or anything like that?
Oh, first of all, so much love to Dominican writers. Angie Abreu, shout out to you. We love you and appreciate everything you do.
We
Of
love
course,
her
they
real.
were. Oh my God, she's just amazing. Oh yeah, that's so cute with the hearts. But yeah, she's just the Dominican writers. I mean, they're so fantastic in amplifying and promoting us. They really hold up Dominican writers. So yes, they were part of. They helped me do my lunch party for Platanos Go with Everything.
I love that.
And I work with them. I'm in touch with them and try to work with them and help out in however way I can. And they have some announcements coming up with something that I'm doing with them too. So
we were saying about Dominican writers help you with the book launch. So through your work with Dominican writers, did they help you secure the illustrator, or you already knew the person from before?
Well, I got the publisher took care of HarperCollins was the publisher of the book, so they handle all of the publishing part of it. Dominican writers were just hosting my book launch for that time. So yeah, the publisher is the one that whenever you write a manuscript, they get the illustrator, and then they send you the work and their work, and see if this is the illustrator that you want to work with. And I was like, of course, Sarah Palacios did an incredible job.
Oh my God, I love the illustration.
The illustrations were absolutely gorgeous, and I was so happy. She was so wonderful. Because I would just say, "Oh, can you do this? Can you add this?" And she had asked through the publisher to send her pictures of what like a Dominican household would look like, and anything, any of the stuff in there that in the illustrations. I just sent her a folder with a bunch of pictures, and she pretty much put everything in there.
Oh
she just did a fantastic job.
And the abuelitos, those were like also my favorite. Like my favorite photos were like when she was in the because it reminds me of, I'm from La Vega in Dominican Republic, so we have a lot of plátanos and we also have a lot of rice. So it reminded me of like my grandma's backyard because she had a bunch of like plátano trees planted back there. So that was one of my favorite images. And then also when the grandpa and grandma came over to spend time with the family, those were like the two illustrations that really, really, really like touched my heart. I was like, oh my God. And the first time I read it to my students out loud, because I was actually the library teacher at the school that I was at before. And I was like on the verge of tears. I was like tearing up and I was like, oh my God. It was just something about like feeling represented and seeing it also was like so special to me.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Getting all the feedback was just been so amazing and wonderful. And and Sarah was great. She, when we were doing we were finalizing the illustrations actually of all the characters. We had already finalized the main characters, the whole family.
Yeah.
The mother, father, and the sibling and her sibling. But around the time when we were confirming, finalizing the illustration for the grandparents, that's when Johnny Ventura died.
Mm-hmm.
And so the grandfather that she did initially is not the same. I sent her, in honor of Johnny Ventura, I sent her a picture of Johnny Ventura and I asked her if she could please do it over in his image.
Oh my
And
God.
she did it, Yeah. So he is, the grandfather in the book is an image of him. It was in his name. And because Johnny Ventura's music was my parents, like I said, my house was the party house, where everybody gathered. I mean, we had my mother's comadres, like we would go to their houses too, but a lot of it happened in our house. And his music, that was the soundtrack of my childhood.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
I wanted to honor him in that way. I was like, oh, we gotta get, I gotta get, and I hope that Sarah doesn't mind having to do the illustration over. And she didn't even hesitate. She was like, sure. And she did it. I was so happy that, now he's a part of the book.
Yeah.
So
I feel like illustrations just like take the book that much, like it just elevates the book. The writing obviously is so important because I feel like without good writing, the illustrations are really like meh, is what it is, right? Because I've also seen very beautiful books that the writing is like, it could be better, right? But I feel like the combo of the illustrator plus the writer, the author, of course, it was just like this book is like one of my favorite books, and I wish you like so much success and continued success rather. And to get out there and continue to, represent us in such a beautiful and positive light. Yeah. So what was your favorite part of the book? So besides like changing the grandpa to be Johnny, like to look like Johnny Ventura, what was like one of your favorite parts of the book?
Oh man. I love the party scene. I love seeing because that was really reminding me of like gatherings at my house. And the scenes with the mother cooking with Yesenia, because I was that kid. I was always in the kitchen with my mom, and like she would come home from work, and God bless her, she was a single mom. And, she would cook and we would give her moment to, just settle in and, and then she would, after all of that, she would be cooking. And so that was my time with her, because she was always so busy. So I just appreciated those moments where, and I kind of, because my brothers weren't in there cooking, even though she made them learn how to cook. I would be in the kitchen with her, and that was like our special time together where she can tell, we're good having a beautiful exchange, whether about her day or my day. And, because otherwise, she was just trying to get things done and trying to put food on the table. So those were our special moments. And then she, of course, taught me how to cook, which I appreciate. Because now my mother passed on. So, whenever we have family gatherings, my brothers are like, can you cook some penne? Can you cook, can you cook things that she will cook? And so those were special moments for me, special parts of the book. Yeah.
Also, one thing that I love that you actually like put down on paper how to make mango, because the kids are like, oh, this is how you make.
Yeah. I was like, we got to get that. They were asking, and I was like, mango was probably the best one to put in the back, of the book. So that was good, and it's a great activity for parents, to do with their kids. Of course, children, you have to do it with adults. Yeah. But so it was important to have that in there.
Yeah, and then tying in food, I feel like especially we're comadres, we're recording the day before Thanksgiving. So tying in food, I feel like it represents culture, but like it also represents, for me, food represents family as well. Like without food, I feel like a lot of things happen around the dinner table, and tying in the food piece was like very essential.
Food is a connector, like it brought us all together, and there was always food. And my mother was the kind of person that like whoever came, they got a plate. Like I remember one time I came home from college, and I had been out with with my friends. I went away to school up in Binghamton, SUNY Binghamton, and I came home. It was probably like 3 in the morning with my friends. And my mother got up and she's like, "You guys hungry? You want me to cook anything?" I was like, "Mommy, go to sleep. It's 3 in the morning." But she was just like that. Like that was her way of showing love. She was always trying to cook for anybody that came to the house. Like if you came to a house, you got a plate, and that was the way that she showed love to people and to us, and I think too, like, because she was so busy working and trying to take care of us and get everything that we needed, that was her way to, I guess, to make up, to show her love to us, like it was like a reminder, like, I know I'm busy, but she just nurtured us and loved us in that way with food. So again, that was why I had to make that a part of the book.
All right, Lisa. So you said you were working on something with Dominican writers. So we're going to definitely be paying attention to your Instagram and your website for that. But any other projects that you can share about that are coming up either end of year or 2024?
Well, yeah, I have. Yeah, and pay attention to Dominican Writers' Instagram because they'll be announcing it. They already started the announcement, so it's not it may not surprise anybody. But I'm excited about that though. And then the other thing is in 2024, I have a book called Abuela's Library, and it is a tribute to librarians. And it was a really fun book. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
And I do have that information on my Instagram as well. But I'm excited about that book as well. And what's really dope and special about it too is that the illustrator is Jaidi Gomez is her name. She's also on Instagram. I think it's Jaidi Arts. I forget her, but it's on my. Yeah, she's the illustrator for that book. So, and she did just a gorgeous job with the illustrations as well. So I'm excited about that. But that one comes out June 11th of 2024. Yeah. So
amazing.
So,
all right, Lissette, I want to say thank you so much for spending time with your comadres. You're like officially a comadre of the show. Welcome.
All right. Comadre Lissette, let's go.
So I'm going to end the show how I always end it, which is follow me on Comadreando Pod, and you can follow Lissette on her social media. Do you want to drop your handles?
Oh yeah, I am on Instagram. I am Plátanos Go With Everything, the title of my book. And on Twitter, it's Lissette J. Norman. So at Lissette J. Norman on Twitter. So those are the only two that I deal with. And thank you too for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And I love this wonderful exchange that we've had. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah.
So, comadres, you know that if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram via email at marcy@comadreandopod.com or slide up into my DMs. Please visit our website to find out about our latest blog posts, any events that are happening, and to copy your official Comadre merchandise. And I want to say thank you again for spending time with your comadre. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Hello, comadre.
Hey, comadre.
Do you have a minute for comadre time?